Thank you. Can you plug it in there?
Hey,
Okay.
Michael, nice beard.
You have to unplug this one.
Thanks.
I just said goodbye to mine last week.
Yeah, I'm worried that might happen sometime in the future.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the event. I'm going to go ahead and get started now, and then whoever else trickles in will trickle in. Yeah, so today's event, this is the first event of the semester so far. And yeah, so we're going to get started with, it's called How I Got a Job Before Graduating. And basically, we're going to interview 3 students in our MAC program currently who have a job offer lined up for after they graduate, and just kind of figuring out how they did that. So yeah, and then next week I'm going to make a quick announcement now, and then I'll go back to it again at the end. But next week we have our Meet the Firms event, which is really the main event that AHS provides for our students to get employment. So it's very important that everybody is there, especially if you don't have a job yet. So yeah, there's going to be opportunities for networking with firms. And yeah, so I'm Tasha Hagath. I am the current AHS president right now. And I'm kind of in charge of, along with Melissa and Rebecca and a whole load of other people, but running some events basically to help our accounting students get employed and be successful. So yeah, today we're starting it off with a panel event. Let me just pull up my questions here for the panel. Okie doke. So we have Rebecca, Melissa, and Jack today. So I'm going to open it up to you guys. Let's just set an order right now that will go in that order. Rebecca first, Melissa second, then Jack. So can we start with the question 1? Tell us your name, where you're from, your academic standing at APU, like your year, and where you will be working post-grad. We'll open that up.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Becca Hatfield. I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona. And then I am a MAC student. So this is my first semester as a MAC student, but I also did my undergraduate degree at APU, and I will be working at Deloitte, which is one of the big 4 accounting firms once I am done with the MAC program.
All right, so my name is Melissa Langerveld. I'm originally from Pullman, Washington, actually, and I as well graduated in May, and now am a part of the Master of Accountancy program. And so I will be working at Cape and Krause next year.
What's up, guys? My name's Jack Pavlison. I'm from Claremont, which is right down the street from APU. I graduated from APU as well, and I'm in the MAC program as well. And then I'm going to be working for KPMG in the Irvine office, and I'm going to be doing audit.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So the next question is, what was your experience with your firm's recruiting process? How did you get in contact with them? Just kind of that whole process of first getting your foot in the door. What was that like for you guys? So we'll start with Becca again.
Yeah, so I guess I should have specified that I am in the Phoenix office, and then I'm also going to be in audit. So around my sophomore year of college, I declared accounting, and then my dad is actually a CPA, and so he has some connections in the Phoenix area, which is where I was looking for, and not California. So I got in contact with a person within Deloitte, and then they referred me to their recruiter. And then once I was in contact with their recruiter, I kind of went through the entire recruitment process that you normally would. So I got into contact with an audit team and went to lunch with them a couple of times just to get a feel for how the company culture is. And then between my junior and senior year, I did the summer leadership program, which is like a 3-day event. A lot of the big 4 firms and a lot of the regional firms like BDO and some of the bigger firms also have a summer leadership program. So I did that. And then this last summer, I did my internship, which obviously was a little different because of the whole COVID situation, but I still did have an internship. It was a 2-week virtual internship. And then after that, they gave me a full-time job offer. So yeah, I got into contact with them through a reference through my dad, but I just want to say, like, I know not everyone's dad is a CPA, but you know, everybody knows someone in the industry. So having connections just to meet someone within the firm, it doesn't have to be the recruiter. They can always refer you back to the recruiter. So I think the recruiter is usually the number one way to go with getting into a firm.
Mm-hmm.
And so my recruiting process, definitely, I think everyone's is a little different. So mine was, I went to all the Meet the Firms when I was an accounting student undergrad. I made some connections that way. But how I actually ended up getting hired with Cape and Krause is that I went to like a separate panel where it was just them and their employees came. And so that was really good because it was more one-on-one with their firm. So they also are an audit firm, public accounting, except they focus on not-for-profit. So I went to that event. I was able to meet a lot of their partners, give them my resume, and get in contact. And that was my junior year. And then I actually interned internal audit in Houston, Texas between my junior and senior year. And when I was doing that, they offered me for the next summer, so this past summer. And so I decided, you know, like I was trying internal audit, but I might as well test that out and see how that goes for me, because I think especially if you're unsure what exactly you want to do in accounting, it's important to like try different things out. And so I accepted that. And so I just completed that this last summer. It was a 2-month, also a remote internship based off of Brea, California, but I just did it from home. But I definitely learned a lot more about audit, especially after having like 2 internships. And so usually at the end of your internship, you know, they'll just kind of run through like how it went. You'll meet with whoever was your supervisor, and they'll kind of let you know how it went. And so then I was able after that to like receive a full-time offer for next October after our master's program. So that was my recruiting process. So again, yeah, definitely I got the internal audit actually through a family friend reference. So like Becca said, it's like, you know, important to just use all the contacts you have. But also like with Cape and Krause, it shows you can show up to those events that we're hosting and really meet people that way too. And it's important to get your resume out and meet with as many people as you can.
Yeah, so first thing I want to say is know your timeline. So you guys are probably hearing things about like, after my junior year, I did this, after my senior year, I did this. So just for if you're younger or you're not quite sure how it works. So to become a CPA, you need 150 units, which is basically the equivalent to like a 5th year school because you graduate college with 120 units. So you kind of want to be thinking about that during your recruiting process. So something that I decided was, okay, I'm going to do a master's. I'm going to do a 5th year. So that means that after I graduate undergrad, I'm going to be doing my internship. And then after my junior year, I was looking to do a summer leadership program. So I kind of knew that up front. I mean, if you're on pace with your units in undergrad and you're like, you know, I can take an extra class, you know, every other semester, a couple over the summer, and I'm going to graduate in 4 years with 150 units, then your timeline is just pushed back a little bit. So after your sophomore year, you would be looking for a summer leadership program, after your junior year internship, and then you would start working after your senior year. So anyway, I kind of knew ahead of time. So my junior year, I went to meet the firms, had a good experience networking with some people. I had an interview for an internship. I had an offer for a summer leadership program. And then I also, not through Meet the Firms, and this, both Becca and Melissa touched on this, it's kind of like utilizing your network a little bit. So I actually asked my friend who I knew was interning with KPMG. I was like, I hadn't talked to him in like 2 years. but I was like, hey, like I heard you doing this, like how is it? Like tell me a little about what you're doing. And so ultimately he put me in touch with the recruiter. So he was in the Nashville office because that's where he went to college. So I talked to that recruiter and then ultimately got pointed to the OC recruiter. But like Becca said, the recruiter, like that's going to be your best person. Like that might not be your first person that you talk to, but if you can talk to multiple people and end up talking to the recruiter, that's going to be your best bet. I also want to say, and you can, I mean, Meet the Firms is huge, and Meet the Firms is like a really great way to get in front of professionals and talk to professionals. But as you've heard us say, like that's not the only way. Like there's plenty of other ways to ultimately network and kind of potentially find opportunities. So, I mean, and if you think that you don't know anybody, like you know more people than you think. Like it could literally be like one of the professors, you know, you ask one of your accounting professors, like, hey, can you point me in the right direction? Or it could literally be like your mom's coworker's husband, like worked in public accounting, and you ask him if you can have like 30 minutes of his time and talk to him and ask about what he does, because ultimately you might not get a job out of that, but that's going to help prepare you for when you're in an interview and you're talking to professionals later on. But anyway, back to the question, summer leadership program. That's how I got in touch with them. And yeah, so.
Great. Thanks, Jack, also for touching on the 150 units thing. I know if you're not like a senior right now, then you probably haven't heard of that before, and it can be a little confusing at first. So yeah, just highlights from that question. Definitely the recruiter is going to be your best bet. And if you just ask for the recruiter, you can probably locate them within just a couple people. That is who you want to be talking to. That is who will give you a chance to interview. So make sure you're trying to do that. And at Meet the Firms, we might not have access to the recruiters, but you definitely, whoever you're talking to will know who to talk to, at least to get you in contact with the recruiter. So definitely be asking that question for sure. The next thing I want to just bounce off you guys is how and when did you get your job offer? You kind of touched on how you got your offer for the internship, because you guys all went through an internship first. But what was the process like getting a job offer? I know sometimes they just give it to you. Sometimes they do a performance review, etc. So Becca, I want to start that one off.
Yeah, so for the offer that I accepted, it's a little bit of a different story because I accepted it during COVID, so things are very different. But I actually had an internship before my senior year with KSJG, which is now with them. And it was at the end of my internship. They took me to lunch. They kind of went over the reviews they got like given me, the people I had worked with, and then they offered to give me they gave me a full-time offer at that time and gave me a chance, like a month or 2 months to think about it. So that's how it worked with that one. So yeah, it's like they'll kind of have a conversation with you about your strengths, your weaknesses, what the people you worked with said about you, and then they usually give you about 1 to 2 months to think about it, or you can probably ask for an extension. I ended up declining that offer because it was just a little too soon for me, because it was before my senior year and I still had 2 more years of school. So I had, obviously everything has changed since then, so I'm glad I didn't commit back then. But then for my job offer that I did accept, it was a little bit different this year. So they gave us our job offer before our internship even started because they felt bad that our internship got cut so short. And that's something that I really want to like emphasize, that if you get in and you get into a summer leadership program or you get into an internship, especially with the bigger firms, they're pretty much set on you. They know that they want you to work there unless you do something like incredibly terrible, which I don't even know what that would be, because I've heard horror stories of people messing up on their internship so bad and they still get an offer. So a lot of the time when you get that summer leadership program or you get that internship, they're pretty much dead set on having you in their firm already. So that's why they gave us the full-time offer before my internship even started, because they knew that they wanted us they've been recruiting you for like 2-3 years. So that's how I got mine.
Yeah, and I kind of touched on mine a little bit already, but like after my 2-month internship, So they were kind of watching, like seeing how I performed. And then one of the partners just like, you know, on a video call went over like my performance, like, yeah, kind of like a performance review. Also, he like reached out to all the people I'd been working with, you know, to get their input of like how well I did, how well I worked. And so it was like through that and like seeing that he then like, you know, just verbally said, we want to offer you a job, like when would work for you. And a lot of times like in public accounting, it's nice because they're helpful with the timeline. Like I would be able to start working in October, which would give me like this next summer to, you know, prepare for the CPA and try to knock out as much as possible. So a lot of times too, you know, if you communicate with them and say like, hey, this is like, if I did accept a full-time offer, this would be like the best time window. It's really nice to just like communicate that with them, and you know, maybe it won't work, but they'll let you know, or they'll at least try to take it into consideration. And so and then like after verbally talking about it, then like a couple weeks later, you know, I got like the actual official like offer letter. And so yeah, and then I also reached out actually to like the internal audit that I had worked with in Texas the summer before, and let them know like, hey, I have this offer, because back then they had let me know too, they were really happy with my performance, so they were wanting me to work there. And so I reached out to them too to see if it was opportunity. And so through that, you know, we're talking about like an offer there. So I'd also say, like Becca said, even though they give you an offer and sometimes it's like a short window, you know, like 1 week they'll say we need this decision by, make sure you talk to them and say like, hey, does it need to be by then, or can I have an extension? Can I have time to think about it? If you've interned other places, worked other places, you know, communicate with them and say, is there any opportunities here? Just make sure you're really like thinking about the decision and like at a place, working for a place that's like best for you. And so, yeah, like internships are very important, and oftentimes offers will come for that. So just be like very patient with the process and like really think about an offer before you accept it.
Yeah, so my experience was pretty similar to Becca's, whereas they kind of extended it unofficially kind of when the internship started, kind of like we've remained committed to you, but obviously that's probably not usually going to happen. You kind of heard how the process is usually. I'll also mention how it was for my summer leadership program. Like there was an interview for that, and then I heard back like 3 weeks to a month later, which felt late. So I was like starting to get nervous almost. And then it was the same thing with my internship. After like I was waiting a little bit, and then it kind of took longer than I thought to get an offer. So I don't know, just if that helps at all to give you a general idea. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Okay, so some highlights from that again are once you have your foot in the door, they don't want you to leave because they've already spent all this time and money recruiting you, and especially if you have an internship, training you. So yeah, they don't want you to leave. So the best thing you can do is just get your foot in the door, really. After that, it's pretty much easy-ish. The next question is, since this event is tonight's event is supposed to sort of advertise our Meet the Firms event and get you guys excited about that. I just want to know, what were the benefits for you guys, even if, like Becca said, or Jack, you said you didn't meet your contact maybe through Meet the Firms in the end for your final offer, but just what benefit did you get out of Meet the Firms as an event, going to that for years?
Yeah, so I've been to 3 Meet the Firms at this point, I believe. So the first time I went, I was a sophomore, and I went to APU's and also Biola's Meet the Firms, I believe. And even though I was a sophomore at that time, and I was like, that's like pretty young because I had a 5th year, that was too early for me to be getting any positions. But I went and talked to every single firm, got everybody's business cards, gave my resume to everybody. There were some people like where I knew there was no way I was getting anything with them, and I asked them just to look at my resume and like tell me what they thought was good or bad. That was before I knew what resume paper was. I literally showed up with like printer paper at Meet the Firms. That was a big mistake. But anyways, So it was a big like learning experience, and I'd say like the best and most important part was learning how to talk to professionals and network, because networking is kind of like it's a very different communication skill that you don't necessarily learn like just in classrooms and stuff. It's definitely something you learn by talking to professionals and going through networking events. I ended up getting an interview for some reason with some firm out of the Meet the Firms, and I interviewed for 3 hours with the firm and didn't get a position. But like that practice of interviewing for 3 hours, like it changed the game for me, and I really learned how to talk to professionals, like how to relate to them, how to pick up on like, because you want to talk like about the firm and about your experience and like why you'd be a good fit, but you also want to be able to connect with them personally. So like learning that balance of talking to them professionally and also personally, that's just something that you can't really learn unless you're actually practicing and doing it. And I think it's also very important to go this year, even though it's virtual, because networking over Zoom is awkward. And like I had an entire internship over Zoom, and it was like super awkward. People like have their camera on, don't have their camera on, so I think this year it's very important to go to Meet the Firms and learn how to network and talk to people in a business setting over Zoom, because honestly, like that's probably going to be a part of our future for a while now. Even when things go back to normal, or if things go back to normal, I'm sure there's going to be companies that are going to be utilizing an online platform way more than they ever did before. So that's another thing that even I will be like attending Meet the Firms and see how it is to network with people over a virtual platform. Was that all of the questions? Yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, so I went to 3 Meet the Firms, so my sophomore, junior, senior year. I think it's just like, Becca said, sophomore year I wasn't necessarily looking for a job yet. Like I knew I was too young, but I use that as just practice, and also like just to establish yourself, because if you're talking to, people, and then you come back next year and you come back the year after that, like they will start to remember your face, and it really helps give you a leg up, especially because like you'll give them your resume. They might remember your last year's, like see improvement. So I think it's just really good in general to establish yourself. And also just, yeah, with the communication aspect, I really got a lot more comfortable just like talking to people and knowing how to like relate to professionals. And so just that practice alone is going to be really, really helpful. And then with like Cape and Krause, like who I did work with, although I went to like a separate panel that AHS put on, it was because I had met them a few times before that they were able to like remember me, and I was able to get a phone interview. So it, like I'd say, even though it wasn't directly Meet the Firms, it really helped and established me. And so, yeah, just make sure like you're going to as many events as you can, whether it's like Meet the Firms or any other things. And yeah, like Zoom, I think if you're able to do it over Zoom and you're able to talk and engage, it's going to be only easier, if you're talking in person or when you go into interview. And I actually did have a few interviews from that, like CLA, which is a public accounting firm. And a similar thing, I like 2 years in a row, I got an interview really long. I thought it went like amazing, and no job offer. So I would say like, it's going to be discouraging. So I'm not going to say like, don't be discouraged, but like really use that to improve. And I emailed them both times and said, hey, like you didn't pick me, like what can I do to improve? Like what was the reasoning? And they will email you back and be straight up and like let you know. Sometimes it comes down to like you didn't have the right timeline that we're looking for. So another thing is, don't take it personally. It's not necessarily you or your resume or anything like that. It could just be like details within their firm. So use that, interview as much as you can, and just like communicate as much as you can. And in the long run, it like really, really helps you.
Awesome. Yeah, so first I just want to say how cool Meet the Firms is, and then I'll kind of talk about some advice. But because if you think about like what I was saying earlier, where like if you can like try and seek out people, even if you wouldn't see them like in your network like initially, like how it can be kind of hard, but it's rewarding. With Meet the Firms, like literally there's like 20 firms just like coming to you. Like you don't have to go to anybody, like they're coming to you. So it just gives you a chance to really be yourself and just knock it out of the park. So that's really awesome. And then as far as advice, so like Becca and Melissa, I went my sophomore, junior, and senior year. So my sophomore year, I kind of winged it. Like I didn't do any research. I had resumes on resume paper, but I didn't know much about the firms I was talking to. So I was like asking for summer leadership program. Like I asked this really small firm. There was a partner there, and like his time's really important. I'm like, so do you have a summer leadership program? He's like, what's a summer leadership program? So I'm like explaining to him what a summer leadership program, and then I'm thinking like, I definitely should have done this research beforehand because I could be talking to him about my resume, but instead I'm at, it's like, so if you do literally like 30, 45 minutes of research of just quickly, like 5 minutes on each firm on their website really quick, you can find what they have to offer. Some of them might have a summer leadership program, some might not. Pretty much all of them are probably going to have an internship and then obviously a job. So know what you're looking for, know if the firms have it. So then when you're talking to them, you can skip the generic question of like, what's work-life balance look like? But you could be like, instead you could say like, what kind of clients do you work on? I saw that, you guys like generally work with like nonprofits, like what's that like? It's like the conversation's different and then all of a sudden you get remembered more and it's a lot better experience for you and them because they remember you and you're learning everything along the way. So Meet the Firms is really cool because you're exposed to so many professionals in one place. And it's just, I think it's awesome. So.
Great. Love those tips, Jack. That's super helpful, especially if it's your first Meet the Firms. Yeah, just really drive home that point about researching the firms because you don't want to come up there and be asking them. We were just talking about this today. I was talking about this with Dr. Thornton. You don't want to come up to them and ask, like, tell me about your firm. You want to know about their firm, and then you want to ask them questions about things you couldn't find on the website. That's what's going to really wow them and make you stand out. So, and it really doesn't take very long. Just we'll have a list. We'll send a list ahead of time of all the firms that will be there, and then you can just pick, the ones that you're really the most interested in talking to. Research on their website for maybe even 5-10 minutes, and you'll find plenty of things that you have questions about, I'm sure. So. Yeah, so just one final question for you guys. It's obviously probably extremely gratifying knowing that you have a job lined up after college. How has that affected you in the way you study and yeah, just the way you approach your classes and stuff now?
Okay, I will answer that, but I just want to add on to what Tasha said really quickly. So definitely hit the firms that are like your top choices first, and like make sure you hit the ones that you really want to talk to first. But if you have another hour, 30 minutes or whatever, and you've already hit the firms that you want to talk to, go and talk to the ones that were lower on your list because you never know who is going to transfer and end up somewhere else. Like I have gone through and I work for the School of Accounting, so I invite firms. And I remember I'm like, oh, this person actually works for this firm now, and this person is in industry. So you never know where people are going to end up. So if you make that connection and you add them on LinkedIn or ever keep in contact, they might end up somewhere that you really want to work in the future. So it never hurts to have extra contacts. Now, to answer the question, so I think the number one thing that having a job already lined up before I graduate, like impacts is the CPA exam. So number one, a lot of firms, if you sign on before you are finished and before you've taken the CPA exam, they will either pay up front for your CPA review material like Becker or Wiley, whatever. They'll pay for part of it. They'll reimburse you for tests. They'll give you a bonus if you pass it. Like there's a lot of monetary value that comes from the firms if you sign on before you have taken the CPA exam. So like the firm I'm with, they are paying I don't even know, $4,000 or whatever it is for Becker. And then, and I have access to that like immediately. I got it the day after I signed my offer. They're like, you have full access to Becker to start reviewing for the CPA. And then they will also reimburse my expenses through that whole testing process. So that takes like a huge burden off my back because I know a lot of students have to pay it up front, or they're like still working on getting a job offer, but they're worried it's too late. So then they pay the full cost of those CPA review material when they could have like maybe waited a couple more months and gotten the firm to pay for it. So that's the number one thing that it affects on my end, but also I have more time to focus on school and the CPA review course instead of worrying about getting a job like that. I know that that's a huge stress, especially now with everything happening in the world. And knowing like even like right when COVID hit, even knowing like, oh, I still have that internship, and luckily mine didn't get canceled. And but it just offers a lot of like relief and reassurance knowing that I already have something set up and I don't have to worry about that right now. I can just focus on what I'm doing right at this moment, which is school and the CPA course.
Thanks, Becca.
As far as like with me, I think it's after having like internships and actually going out and like being in the audit profession, you kind of learn what like information is really valuable to you. Like in class, you're able to like pick stuff up and be like, I know I'm for sure going to need to know this or use this. So while like you still obviously need to learn everything, you can really like focus on what you know will help you in your career, and like kind of file it away, because it like will help impress, you know, those working with you. It'll help you just start off like on a strong foot. And so, yeah, being able to like see what information is like really vital in the actual like auditing profession is something that like I've come away with. And then also, yeah, same thing with like the CPA. Right now with like classes and stuff, not working like full time in the accounting industry, it's like you're able to focus on school and the CPA both, because you know obviously they tie a little bit. And so really using that time, especially if you do decide to do your master's to get that 150 units, that's kind of set up to really prep you for it. We have an integrative review course that's like specifically targeted to review for the CPA. So really just like focusing on that and knowing how important like the CPA will further you when you do start your career in accounting, whether it be like tax or audit, you know, just knowing what's going to be really valuable and knowing like how important that CPA is.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. And Jack?
I wanted to add a couple more advice nuggets before I forget them, because I think they're important. And then I'll talk about that. A question that you might get, like, so let's say you do all this prep for when you're talking to the professional, and then, you know, you're in the chat room with them. And so sometimes they'll be like, maybe going through your resume and they're like, oh, well, I see you worked here, blah, blah, blah. If they don't do that, maybe you're like, what do I say? You know? Or one question they might ask you right off the bat is like, are you interested in tax or audit, or do you know yet? So that's another thing that would be worth some thought. So if possible, before Meet the Firms or just in general, it'll help you figure out what you want to do ultimately. But if you are able to talk to somebody in audit and somebody in tax, so you can kind of have an idea if they tell you like what audit's like and you're like, that sounds horrible, and maybe that's not what you want to do. It just helps you out. So then when and Meet the Firms, they're like audit or tax, like you're not just making something up. Like you can say, I don't know, like I'm not sure yet because I haven't taken the classes, but it's good to have some sort of idea for that. I just wanted to mention that. And then another good question to ask them is what a day in the life looks like, because that way you can learn a lot about what exactly they do. And then they also probably would like talking about themselves to a certain extent. So that would help too. So sorry, I just wanted to make sure to get those out there. But as far as this question, it feels good. It's cool to be able to like really try and take like certain things from what you're learning and really think about how you can apply that in the future. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Like I'm really looking for things to try and take with me once I start working. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. So those are all the questions that I had prepared, but I want to open it up for anybody on the line here. Basically, these are just students like you who have maybe been to a couple more Meet the Firms, who have maybe been through a couple more recruiting seasons. And so just anything you have that you want to ask that you're maybe apprehensive about, or maybe that you don't know about 100%, just go ahead. I'm going to open up for questions now. Just come off mute and ask your question.
I had a question. This is a new kind of environment with Meet the Firms being virtual. I know, like, if we had it in person, we'll be in professional, business professional attire. But what's kind of expected for people to wear on Zoom? It feels kind of awkward to wear a full-on suit, like in my bedroom or kitchen on a computer.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, try to keep it professional. I would say at the least for a guy, maybe a polo. For a girl, you know, just looking nice and professional. Obviously your pants don't matter, but yeah, you are still trying to impress the you're still trying to impress the firm. You're still trying to talk to them. So yeah, so I think still try and look as professional as you can from the waist up. If anyone on the panel has anything else to add.
I was gonna say, like, definitely, I still dress professionally for my internship, even though it was virtual, and even though it feels weird, like I was in my bedroom, like wearing like a jacket and stuff, like it feels weird, but it's gonna come off to them that you care, and so it's way better to be overdressed than underdressed, because like if you're wearing a full suit and like jacket and stuff, it just shows the firm that you really care about how you're presenting yourself to the firm. You're putting forward your best foot. So even though it feels kind of awkward, like the whole night's gonna feel a little awkward because this is new for everybody. That's just my 2 cents, but I would say just embrace the awkwardness and dress up, because it's just gonna show that you care.
Yeah, thanks. Great question, Elliot. Anything else you guys want to ask?
I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question for Becca. You said you went to the Meet the Firms as a sophomore. What can you do as a freshman if you were to go?
Yeah, so freshman and sophomore are pretty much like around the same. It depends on if you're doing if you're just doing your undergrad, or if you're going to do a 5th year as well. As a freshman, honestly, I think if you just go in, and if you're like not entirely sure about accounting, I'm sure they would love to talk to you about like why they chose accounting, and like why, like how they got into the firm they're in, like why they ended up choosing accounting as a major in the first place. Because they're always trying to get more people into the pipeline. So if they start young, like they can start like molding you into the type of student they want from the beginning. They can give you advice on like accounting, recruiting, like what your next steps would be. That would be a good thing to do, is say like, I'm a freshman, I'm an accounting major, like I'm not sure what type of firm I want to go to, what size of firm I want to go to. I want to get a feel for everybody, like each firm's company culture and stuff, but also like if I was going to be working for your firm, what would the next steps be for me? Do you guys have any opportunities for sophomores, juniors? I know some firms, not a lot, but some firms will have like a preview day type of thing that will be open to anybody just to learn more about the firm. I think Melissa said she attended one for Cape and Krause. And then also kind of like what Jack was saying, if you're not entirely sure about tax or audit because you haven't taken those classes yet, you can ask a tax person about their experience. You can ask an audit person about their experience. And I would just say be really open and honest about the fact that you're a freshman and you're trying to get your foot in the door and learn as much as possible, because they're not going to like look down at you and be like, oh, you don't have any experience. Like just be open and honest that you're coming like ahead of schedule. Like you're going to be like the youngest one there ahead of schedule than everybody else that's going to be recruiting later on. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add to that, but that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I actually didn't even know I was going to be a accounting major when I was a freshman. I was like undeclared. It wasn't until sophomore year. So I think that's, really cool that you already have an idea of accounting in your head. And the more Meet the Firms, the better. So yeah, definitely show up. And also I think like I asked a question my sophomore year is like, what should I be working on these next few years to stand out like as a candidate that your firm would hire? And a lot of people had really good ideas for me, certain things they wanted to see, certain things I could get involved in to stand out, what I could do in the meantime. Yeah, I did go to a preview night at Clifton Larson Allen, so you'll hear that. It's like CLA, also a public accounting firm. They have a bunch of offices across California. But I went to that, I think, my sophomore year, and that necessarily doesn't get you an interview because they know you're young, but I was able to just like tour the office and see what auditing or tax, because they have both departments, what it like looked like for them. And so just in general, like gathering stuff about the accounting firm specifically. And yeah, like I think it's really important, you know, to start to think about, do you want to do tax or audit? Because when it comes time to intern and get a job, you really want to, you know, you have an idea. If you're open to both, then that's fine. You know, you could go either way. But like, if you know you want audit, then you're able to be like targeting that and going for firms that have that. So use that time just to get a better idea and clear vision of like what you want to do in the accounting field.
I'll just say really quick that you have nothing to lose. So they said it well, but yeah, you got nothing to lose going your freshman year. You're just going to learn and gain experience. So.
Okay, thank you.
If you're a sophomore, what next steps do you think would be the best steps to take? Like you guys said, like the summer leadership programs. I know I'm probably too young for an internship, but like what steps could I take to get my name out or get my resume out or, you know, like build a connections?
Okay, so do you know if you're going to have your 150 units by the time you graduate in 4 years or 5 years? Do you know yet?
I was just planning on doing 5 years, going to get my master's and then CPA qualification.
Okay, cool. So then basically if you're a sophomore right now, you're not necessarily looking for a summer leadership program because you're like 1 year ahead. But at the same time, you could actually do an internship, like like what Becca did. Becca did an internship when she was, what year did you do an internship, Becca?
I had several internships. I had an internship my junior year during school. I was a tax intern. And then I had an internship between junior and senior year and then after senior year.
Okay. Well, anyway, you can have multiple internships. So while it might be 1 year early for your summer leadership program, I would still be actively looking for an internship and then just tell them, you know, so if you're a sophomore right now, you're CPA eligible in like 2 years or?
Yeah, I think.
Or three, I think. I don't know, whatever year that is. I can't do math off the top of my head. So let's say it's like 2023. So have that in your head, like, hey, I'm CPA eligible in 2023. Like, do you have any programs for that? And then if they say no, just be like, oh, okay, cool. I'm really interested in your firm. Is there anything, like, do you guys have any kind of events like that we could at least learn something about, you know, like, so that's what you would be doing, but internships or any kind of other events. But yeah.
How could I like branch out during COVID? Just because I'm not in California right now. I am at home. Like, what's the best way for me to build connections? Because I don't know how long COVID is going to last. I don't know if I will be going back to school in the spring. Like, there's just so many question marks. Like, I really do want to get an internship this summer. I just don't know what's the best way to proceed with like virtual type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's intimidating. I would say start with kind of look in like your immediate circle and like if you have any friends, maybe in accounting, or maybe ask your friends if they have friends, or ask your parents if they have friends, or ask your aunt and uncle if they have friends. And usually somewhere within that, you'll be able to find at least one person who's like, well, you can talk to my person that does my taxes. And you're like, okay, well, that's a good start. I don't want to do tax. I want to do audit, but that's a good start for me, right? So it's like, if you just, if you first look in your immediate circle and then you kind of look out from there, you'll definitely find somebody. And that's what I would suggest. If somebody can't necessarily help, I would ask that someone if they have someone else that can. So that would be my suggestion. Because if you're not in California, it might be tougher, but
yeah.
Is your end goal to work in California? Like, do you want to work in California, or are you looking to work elsewhere once you graduate?
It really just depends on where I go get my master's, because I was thinking about doing my master's at APU, but I've also been looking at New York City just because I've always wanted to end up there. So like if I go and take my master's there, like that would be great too. But I could also stay at California and also transfer offices if I really want to. It just kind of depends on where I go to get my master's.
Right. Okay. I was just asking because even though you're not in California right now, like everybody's kind of displaced and like not really, like a lot of people might not be near where their like firm office actually is. So I think right now it actually works to your advantage, and because I don't know, internships might be virtual coming up, so like you might be able to do it wherever. But my advice on, if you're not exactly sure where you want to end up yet, is for firms that are like international or national that have offices in LA, New York, everywhere in between, be open about that and communicate like, oh, do you know anything about the New York office? Like, I'm open to like moving here or here. You know, like some firms might actually be like, oh, we don't have a open position in LA, but we have an open position in this firm. But then also for firms that are only local to California, I don't know if everyone agrees with me, but they don't necessarily need to know that you don't want to end up in California or whatever. Like I was networking with California firms when I knew I was going to be going back to Arizona. Just because you're going to get experience and you never know, maybe you really love that firm and are going to end up like staying in California for them or wherever they're located. So yeah, my advice, kind of like Jack, just get as much exposure as you can, make as many connections. You never know like who's going to end up where, who knows who's somewhere else that they can get you in. So even if you don't end up with an internship right now, like your sophomore year, those connections will continue to build. Like I think Melissa mentioned, like if you come back to meet the firms next year, they're going to remember you, and then maybe they'll have an opportunity for you at that point.
Yeah, and I can kind of touch on that because my kind of goal was like try to get as many internships or different jobs as possible to see like what I really enjoyed. And so that's why I did internal audit a couple summers ago. And that internship was for, like Jack was saying, like actually a family friend who I really hadn't talked to in years. But within the accounting profession, when you say like, you know, like my mom said, like my daughter's an accounting major, he said, oh, is she interested in audit, you know, and like that's how I was set up that way. And so, yeah, really just try to reach out as much as you can. And then I'd also say, though, if you aren't able to find a connection that way, Handshake, if you've heard about that, it's a platform. Yeah, make sure you're set up on Handshake because you can like chat with different recruiters. I'd say like you could look at like industry, like my position was like more internal audit, so it wasn't like public accounting, it's called like more private. So I was working for like a Fortune 400 company. So you can be reaching out to them right now, you know, maybe somewhere in New York even, like she said, like Becca said, there's more flexibility. You could work, you know, like a internship and like internal audit for any New York company. So make sure, yeah, you're set up on Handshake and that you can be reaching out, like looking for those internships because usually with like internal audit, they don't mind you being a little bit younger. It's kind of a different format than like public accounting. So yeah, that's definitely my advice.
Thank you.
Great. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah. Can you guys like kind of talk about the learning curves at the internship?
Yeah. Oh, Tasha, you want to go?
I can start. I was just going to start us off, but you jump in as soon as you want. Everyone else at the internship has no experience. So don't be like intimidated at all. Like the fact that you're an accounting major is probably even an advantage. Like I did my internship with econ majors and even like business management majors. So really don't expect that they're going to think that you know everything. They are planning on pretty much spoon feeding it to you. So yeah, I there's like, it's not a very steep learning curve, I would say, at least for the internship. I think the steepest learning curve you're going to get is when you actually get a full-time position, from what I've heard. Like once your full-time position starts, like the first couple of years of your career can be a pretty steep learning curve. But I would say for the internship, don't sweat it. Everyone's your age, everyone's, or at least your education level. And yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Anything
I would say the same thing as Tasha. For the internship, at least, I know like once you start full time, it's going to be a pretty steep learning curve. But even then, they're expecting that, and they're expecting you to not really know anything. Like Tasha said, a lot of the people in my internship were like finance majors, econ majors, I don't even know what else there was. So not everyone had accounting experience. And so I was an audit intern and I had already taken my 2 courses of audit, but there were so many, I would say 50% of the interns hadn't taken audit already. So you're like, I was actually like above the level that they were expecting, which was great, but I was like relearning material because they come to you thinking that you know nothing, because not only do they want to teach you it like the way they want to teach you, but also like they want it to be formatted for their firm. So even if you had more experience and you went to a different firm, they would retrain you with how their firm works with things specifically. So don't worry about like not knowing anything for an internship. I had a tax internship and an audit internship, and I hadn't even taken audit for my first audit internship, and so I didn't know anything. And then when I took audit, I was like, oh, like that's why I did those things. Like they tell you what to do. They're expecting you to not know much. Like they want to teach you as much as you want to learn. So just don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be intimidated by it.
I'll add to that the expectations are low. So like nobody's expecting you to be perfect. So that's the coolest thing, because I mean, whether you have a 4.0 or a 2.0, like kind of like what everybody's been saying, like you still don't really know that much, because what they're teaching you isn't like what debits and credits are for a certain transaction. Like it's a whole different process, or at least for audit, it's like a whole different thing that you haven't necessarily learned about. So they're just looking for, as long as you're positive and you're just like willing to learn and just kind of take things as they come, that's really all that they're looking for. So they're not expecting you to get things right away. And that was one of the biggest things I asked in my internship this past year. I was like, so what's like, how should I go about asking questions here? Like, and they're like, you know what, pretty much everybody's really approachable because they understand that you have questions because it's your first time seeing it. So
so did you just like learn by did you learn a lot by like doing it, or?
Yeah, by doing it, and then you just ask like who's immediately ahead of you, and then so you try it for a little bit, and then you ask them, and they're like, yeah, okay, like this is how you do it. So you just learn by doing it. It's not like you necessarily get something to study and then you're doing it that way. It's like they're like, this is how you do it, and you're like, okay, and then you kind of trial and error, and then there's a lot of trial and error. Like you make mistakes, and then you get help, and you just kind of fall forward. So
I would definitely second everything they said. And also, like, I had done that internal audit internship before I ever took my audit classes. It was able to like excel in that. So it kind of shows you how you don't necessarily need like even academic experience beforehand, but it is a lot of like go as you do. Also, I was surprised to find out how much like writing was important. Different firms work differently, but like work papers, you're writing a lot. It's not necessarily long or complicated, but kind of short. So just like knowing, you know, how to write business wise, they'll teach you that in a lot of classes, but knowing that. And then, yeah, just like questions are really important. And a tip is that you really want to like compile your questions, because, you know, you don't want to be spamming someone every 5 minutes. But like if you do have an internship, you know, everything's going to be new. You're going to be overwhelmed. But if you are working on something, you just, you know, write everything as it comes up, work until you can't work anymore, and then bring all those questions to a person. And that really impresses them, because it shows, you know, like you're trying to be the most efficient you can be. They know you're going to have questions, and they know you're not going to know how to do it. But if you do it that way, you know, it saves them time, it helps you. And so don't be afraid to ask questions, but definitely do it in the way that's most efficient for everybody.
I want to echo that, because that is so important. Like they welcome questions, but also if you come in every 2 minutes, like they will just get back started working on something, and then you come with another question. So in my tax internship, I didn't know anything, and I would write down all my questions, and I would go in and be like, okay, I have 12 questions and I need to go through every single one of them. And then like once they answered one, I was like, oh, actually that answers another one. So that's why like you definitely, what Melissa said, ask, like compile your questions and work until you can't anymore, because once they answer one question, it might start answering your questions that you had down the line. But yeah, that's just something that's really important. But I did feel embarrassed being like, hey, I have 27 questions, and they're like, that's totally fine, we'll go through them one by one. So definitely that's very important.
Thank you.
All
How did
right.
you, sorry.
No, you're okay. Go ahead.
How did you pick between tax and audit? How did you know which way you wanted to go, or based off your experience?
Yeah, I can start off. So to be honest, like you will take a federal tax class. For me, it was within the first week that I knew this isn't for me because it's very rule based, very, like strict. It it definitely is like a different type of mindset that I like didn't have. And so I kind of knew right away that like this isn't for me, even before I'd taken an audit class. And then when I did all my internships and like took the audit classes, it just reaffirmed that that was more my style. It's more, like different engagements every week. Sometimes traditionally you travel more with audit, which is something that's important to me, especially at this age. I want to travel. And it was just more of a team setting, I would say, with an audit. And so for me, that was just like kind of the better fit. And so even though like tax wasn't necessarily it was a little bit of a challenging class, but I was able to get it and grasp it. I just kind of knew that that wasn't I didn't see myself going to work every day and working with like tax law. And, you also do VITA, which is volunteer like income tax. And I don't know how it'll work like remotely, but hopefully, by the time you're more of an upperclassman, they'll be doing that again. And you actually get to sit down and do taxes for people. And it might be overwhelming at first, but like you'll work your way through it and help these people fill it out. And so that I enjoyed a little bit more, besides the tax law, but still I was able to do it and just kind of realize it's not for me. So I think APU does a good job. You'll be exposed to both classes. And hopefully you'll get VITA experience. If you are able to volunteer, definitely make sure you do that so you can feel it out and see if taxes is a good fit for you.
I have something to quickly add on to that as well. I would say I've talked to, because it was the same kind of idea for me. I wanted to figure out both. And actually at my internship, I wasn't last summer, I wasn't required to declare one side or another. They just let me work on some of each, which was really nice. And I got to talk to people on both sides. Kind of the big points that I got from both sides was that tax is more, because it is more rules-based, there's like a correct answer and an incorrect answer more of the time. So if you're the type of person who needs the satisfaction of getting it right, tax is more the way to go. Whereas audit, there's a lot more gray area, especially when you're auditing a company that's already kind of done the work. It's basically you're going in and checking to make sure everything is okay. Basically, you're working in more of a gray space, and it won't be maybe quite as once you have the right answer, you maybe won't know 100% if you have the right answer. You just have to go with your gut more. Also, practically, I know that tax accountants, tax professionals work at the firm more often, whereas audit professionals will travel to the client base and work out of the client's office 3 to 4 days a week.
I mean, I think they pretty much summed it up, but yeah, definitely on a personality level, audit is much more team based. You're on a team the entire time. You're never just by yourself. Whereas tax, you're kind of working on it by yourself. Not to say that you don't have someone to go to for guidance, but you're not like with audit, the intern does a work paper, then the staff person reviews that same exact work paper, and then the person above the staff, the senior, reviews that same exact paper. So it's the same work going through multiple people, whereas tax, you're kind of working on one thing and then you go to someone for guidance on that one thing that you're working on, and they might not really work on the same thing you're working on. So it's definitely more individual. And like Tasha said, the tax people are at the office, audit people are traveling, which that might be something to take into consideration with LA. I commuted for an audit internship and I hated my life because I had to commute like 3 hours each way. But now it's virtual, so does it even matter? I don't know. But yeah, that's personality wise, it's definitely like group setting versus more individual setting. And then also like with audit, it is like there isn't really a correct answer. And also like it's kind of like a big puzzle, and sometimes the puzzle pieces you're given aren't even right. Like you're getting information from clients that isn't even right, and like they don't know what they're doing, and then you have to go and figure out like how to get the correct information to even solve the question, whereas tax is a little more straightforward, I feel like. But yeah, I think it pretty much comes down to like personality, like which fits your personality better.
Yeah, I think everybody has summed it up super well. Yeah, it can be a personality thing. It can also be like what you're personally interested in. Personally, like everybody that I kind of knew that was in accounting was in auditing, so I just like naturally chose it. And then later, once I actually talked to both sides, I figured out that I got it right. But like, I would really suggest trying to talk to both sides. And like, I mean, Becca even did a tax internship and an audit internship. So that's like, and Tasha also got experience with both. So if you could at least talk to somebody from both, ask what a day in their life looks like, you know, like that's going to be your best way of figuring out like what's the best fit for you.
Awesome. We are at the 1 hour mark, so I want to start wrapping it up. But if anybody has any more pressing questions, you can go ahead. I'll maybe take 2 more.
I guess I have one. I have a different background, I guess. So I have like experience not related in specifically accounting, but I worked with an accountant. So do you guys have any, like, as far as internships go, did you internship with people from like a broader spectrum that had prior work in like a medical field or something to that effect, or no?
Yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, so probably more within like that internal audit I did with it's called Quanta, like a bigger corporation. So within that, you know, some people actually had come from different departments and tried out different, whether it be accounting or just different general business areas. And so the nice thing, like we were saying about internships, like you don't worry that, you know, you don't have like the same accounting experience as other people, because you really will be able to learn and like pick it up. And so, yeah, I would say just go in, don't stress about it. There's definitely people out there that have a different background and realize, you know, later, even in life, I worked with someone that was like 50 and they decided I want to do accounting or I want to do audit. And so they were able to like pick it up just fine. Their prior experience with like people and just like socializing, you know, like that really comes in handy when you're talking to clients. Like in our field, we're going to clients and asking questions all the time, like interacting with people. So those people skills will like come in handy. And so, yeah, just like go into it, like, don't worry about it. Like if there's not really like a, you know, even playing field, but like you'll be able to like pick everything up, and stuff in the past will definitely even like come in handy.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just say that my your past might actually help. Like say you have experience in a medical field or like just like working with the medical industry, the firm you work for, they might, you know, audit or do the taxes of a medical company. So you know more of like the niche like terminology they're working with or how their processes work, how their systems work. You're going to have inside information, kind of like as if you're like an internal auditor of it, because you have that past experience. So it might help you put the picture together better in your head because you've seen both sides of it. So I think like honestly, your experience can only help you. It's never going to hurt you. So and also they like having candidates from a bunch of different backgrounds and having a diverse range of experiences. So yeah, I think bottom line is it's only going to help you. I don't think it can hurt you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Do we have one last question before we go?
I have actually.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a general question about internship because it's my first year in this program and I see that I have to take internship as well. I just wanted to ask, how is this process? I have to find a company or usually the university will provide? because I haven't taken it, but I think for the next semester I'm gonna take it.
Yeah, I would ask Kadarian, Professor Kadarian. I think he would be a great resource. I would say just exactly what your situation is. Say that you're looking for an internship, and then just ask if he can point you in the right direction. Other than that, for sure, go to Meet the Firms in a week, because that'll be a great way to meet some firms, and then hopefully something would come out of that as well.
And just to clarify, have you like completed an accounting internship before?
No.
Okay. I just want to make sure because there is like, you know, previous like last summer I did mine, and so I'm able to like get the class credit. It doesn't necessarily have to be like during this master's year. But yeah, so since you haven't had an accounting internship, you definitely want to be looking for it like next semester, or I believe you can even do like this next summer and you just do something with incomplete, but then like you're able to get class credit and still graduate. So yeah, just be in that process of like reaching out to Kadarian and looking for one.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so if you guys have any other questions, we are having, I'm going to plug some other events. So a week from today, next Wednesday at 7 again, we are going to do a resume building workshop. That's just going to be the night before Meet the Firms, just to polish up your resume. Yeah, an accounting resume has a couple things that are maybe a little bit different from a normal resume, so we want to make sure you guys have those fully up to date before Meet the Firms. Also at that time, I'm sure Becca will be on the call. I don't know who else will be, but there will be definitely people on the call who can answer your questions. Or go ahead and email, any of the staff are good. You can email the AHS email, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction to answer your questions. I just want to thank our panel members, Becca, Melissa, and Jack, for your time and for your insights, because I would have loved to go to an event like this when I was a freshman and I had so many questions. And so it's really awesome to just get that exposure earlier on. So thank you guys for your time. And also thank you to the audience for coming. You're just helping us to help you, honestly. The Young School of Accounting is really big on getting as many of their students placed in internships and job positions like as soon as possible. So that's a big emphasis we have here, and these kind of events are what really give us a leg up on other schools. Anything else that I'm missing? Oh, yes. So there's a Google form link. I'm going to put it in the chat right now, and it's your RSVP for Meet the Firms. So Meet the Firms is our event that's happening next Thursday night at 5:30. And here is the link now to send to everyone. Okay. And so I'm just going to have you guys click on that and share it with all of the people in your class or whatever, all your friends in your class. We want as many people there as possible. So if you can just fill out your RSVP link, sorry. And yeah, so definitely show up to our event next week. I'll send out an email about it as soon as we get off this call, really. But yeah, so Becca, did I miss anything?
I think you got it all.
We got it all. Okay, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the Zoom now, but we recorded this session too, so I'm going to send that off to the faculty too. So if you guys want to rewatch it or whatever, if you missed something, we'll get that to you too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.